Hi, I'm Joseph Crudup, and welcome to my storybook. Today, this is the final part 8 in this book. The final series in this book called Coretta Scott King. Today, I'm going to be reading this book in this final chapter. Chapter 10 The Dream Continues. January 15, 1986 marked the first official national holiday in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Coretta and her four children celebrated the historic occasion at the King Center and sponsored a program called Ending the Violence of Poverty, War and Hunger, and Empowering and through created nonviolent actions. Coretta also led the first King holiday march through the streets of Atlanta. From this day forward, Americans will remember Dr. King's lifelong commitment to the full equality of all human beings. We promote it as a holiday for people of all races, religions, and colors. Coretta told journalist Barbara Reynolds in 1988, "I will be disappointed if it turned out to be a black holiday." He was all exclusively. Coretta was named chairperson of the Martin Luther King Jr. Federal Holiday Commissioner in Washington, D.C., to coordinate celebration activities in communities across the nation. By the time of the first observance of the King holiday, the King Center was in established structure. The center now includes an ultra nationalist chapter, Desborough Hills, similar rooms, a 250-seat auditorium, an international conference and cultural center capital, a translated notice leaks, workshops on conflict resolution, nonviolent protest techniques, and community development are also held. The King Center opened its doors to the public in 1982. Since then, more than 1 million people from around the world have come to visit the historic site each year. Korea's fundraising efforts to build the center were extraordinarily over 10 million in contributions were reportedly collected. Korea's achievements did not end with the establishment of the King holiday and the King Memorial Center, though. Her next campaign was the battle against the oppressed all-white government of South Africa and its racist policy of apartheid. Since 1910, the South African government have ruled black Africans with an armed fist. Black blacks were not allowed to own land or live in cities. They were segregated in boroughs over quarter where it was called homelands. Blacks also worked at menial, low-paying jobs and had to send their children to dismissal schools. They were not even allowed to vote. Nelson Mandela, a black African lawyer who helped lead a freedom movement in South Africa during the late 1950s and early 1960s, was sent to prison by the government on charges of treason in 1964. He was given a life sentence. Coretta and scores of other human rights activities in the United States and around the world participate in demonstrations to protest the South African government's politics and Mandela's imprisonment in 1984. Coretta was invited by the United Nations Special Committee against Parliament to be the keynote speaker at days, International Day of Solidarity with the women of South African and Venezuela. A year later, Coretta, Martin the Dog, and Barnes were arrested during a rally in for the South African Assembly in Washington, D.C. Coretta supported trade sanctions against the South African government that were intended to cripple that nation's economy and force its leaders to recognize the black majority. In 1988, the King Synod sent a delegation to South African and a finding mission to document evidence of racial discrimination and government representatives. Coretta was especially drawn to the South African freedom struggle because Mandela and his wife really appeared to walk the same path she and Martin had traveled during their years together. Coretta knew too well the dangers of government oppression and the personal sacrifice needed to lead a nation towards the goal of social justice and peace. The African American and South Africans struggling for human rights were ascendable league, international economy, and popular pressure against apartheid, coupled with decades of bloody violence, finally broke the back of the South African government. In 1990, South African President F.D. de Klerk released Nelson Mandela from prison. Mandela had all the ammunition of the entire world. His people saw him as a symbol of hope in desperate times, just as black Americans had come to regard Martin. To express their thanks to their American supporters, Nelson and Winnie Mandela came to the United States for their national tour. Coretta welcomed the Mandelas to America and introduced Nelson to a set of well wishers at a rally in Atlanta. 4 years later, on May 2nd, 1994, Coretta stood on a ponder with Mandela in South Africa after his nation's first non-racial government election on April 27. It was the first time the black majority had exercised their newly won right to vote. Nelson Mandela defeated President de Klerk and became the new leader of South Africa. The South African freedom movement had come full circle. Coretta, a spiritual sister of the new democratic nation, had done her part to help make this day happen. Today, Coretta Scott King can look back proudly on a lifetime of social service and commitment. Her children are happy and productive adults. Lolana is an actress and film producer. Martin Godoy is a businessman in Atlanta. And Barnes, who also holds a law degree, is a pastor at the Greatest Rising Star Baptist Church, also in Atlanta. On October 1994, Coretta stepped down as CEO and president of the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change and handed the reins of leadership to her son, Dexter Scott. Dexter works with a 36-member board of directors and manages the center's $5 million budget. He plans to build a $60 million King theme park, which, according to Ebony magazine, would use activity technology, CD-ROMs, holograms, and virtual reality to take visitors back to history events in the nonviolent movement for civil rights. It was not easy for Coretta to pass the king legacy onto his son, onto her son. I wanted to, but it was hard to let go. Coretta told Ebony, the gender referred to the son as my felt child, but once I made the decision, I felt relief and inner peace. Coretta still reports to the office to handle her business affairs. Her personal staff met arranges speaking engagements and communications travel plans. Coretta's health is good, and she continues to lead a business, although more private life, since being Coretta's Scott King. However, guarantees that she will always be in the public eye to some degree. She has been a careful guardian of her late husband's speechless in writings. The king estate is reluctant to allow outsiders to use his words or likeness has provoked criticism in the past. Scholars and filmmakers have had to pay the King family for permission to quote or parody Martin in their works. That the King has stated that such tight control is necessary to preserve the dignity of his father by discouraging the spirit of the top 40 version of him, which the slim leader is exploited on the basis of the few quotable lines in his sermons. But Coretta and her children may be ready to share the vast treasure of Martin's words with the world on their terms. In 1997, Time Warner Inc. Time Warner Incorporated announcing a multi-million dollar deal with the King family that will include tape recordings, his speechless, and vinyl of his sermons, some never before described, and new introductions of 5 books written by King. A part of the deal, Coretta is also slated to write a new autobiography, one ongoing drama in nearly 30 years since the publication of Coretta's fourth autobiography is the mystery surrounding James O. Ray, the main convention of assassination Martin Luther King Jr. in 1969. Ray pled guilty. Ray pleaded guilty to King's murder before the case ever got to court. After receiving a 99-year sentence, he recanted his confession. 69 years old and suffering from serious liver disease in 1997, Ray succeeded in getting the King's family support in his repeated protests for a trial. During a 1997 broadcast of the ABC television investigation program Turning Point, Coretta and her children story that belief that Ray did not act alone in Martin's murder, but was part of the larger plot. And spokesman for the Martin Luther King Jr. Center of Nonviolent Social Exchange. Dr. King has explained his family reasons. Has explained his family reasons for supporting Ray's efforts. I don't think a trial. He's. I don't think a trial. He's agreed a trial will give us the uncorroborated truth, but at least we know more than we do now. Coretta has lived with the uncertainty surrounding her husband's death for nearly 3 decades, while keeping her family strong in the face of tragedy. She has also continued to nurture Martin's dream of racial and economic equality for all Americans. Perhaps the event on April 30, 1993, best demonstrated the depth of Coretta's personal commitment to keeping this dream alive. On that date, the King children, their family, friends, and supporters paid tribute to Coretta for her life's contributions to civil and human rights, and film about the civil rights struggling was shown. The Duchess, the Duchess, the Dianess watched in silence. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke about his wife. I wish I could say and satisfied with Martha's ego that I led her down this path, King said. But we walked down this path together. Coel's eyes filled with tears. And that's about it in this book called Coretta Scott King. I enjoy reading this book, and that is the final part 10, final part 8, chapter 10 of this book. Coretta Scott King's book has been very fantastic. I enjoy it, folks, and I enjoy it for the bottom of my heart. Right now, we say goodbye. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, I hope you enjoyed this book. So please, be happy, God bless you, and be love, peace, and joy this morning. God bless everybody. And yours.